My best friend stole my baby name, so I stole her baby's inheritance. If you're hearing this, pause for just 1 second. You're about to hear a story that will change the way you think about betrayal, loyalty, and the price of revenge. If you want more stories like this, raw, honest, and painfully human, make sure you're subscribed. Now let's begin. There are moments in your life when you realize that something sacred has been taken from you. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's security, but sometimes it's something much smaller, yet so much larger. For me, it was a name. Not just any name. A name spoken into existence long before it belonged to anyone. A name whispered by my mother on her deathbed. A name wrapped in grief, hope, lineage, starlight. A name I never imagined someone else could claim, but she did. My best friend, my maid of honor, the person who held my hand while I cried after every negative test. The person who swore she understood. The person who looked me in the eye at her baby shower and told me she just fell in love with it. My name. My daughter's name. Gone. Before she even existed. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't need violence or shouting. The kind that doesn't come in a rush, but in a quiet, surgical motion. Like a knife slipping between your ribs. Precise, efficient, devastating. That's what it felt like the day Jenna announced she was naming her daughter Celeste. You have to understand, Celeste wasn't just pretty. It wasn't trendy. It was the last thread connecting me to someone I had already lost. It was everything I had left of my mother. And Jenna knew. She knew the history, she knew the meaning, she knew the weight of it, and she took it anyway. Everyone at that shower saw it happen. The way their eyes darted between us, the way forks hesitated in midair. The quiet shift in the room that said the wound had been opened, and no one wanted to watch it bleed. But I smiled. I congratulated her. I swallowed every acidic truth rising in my throat, and sat there like a guest at my own funeral. I went home that night and cried so quietly, even my husband couldn't hear me. But this is not a story about sadness. This is a story about how the universe balances itself, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, sometimes in ways so poetic you almost feel guilty for enjoying it. Almost. Because when Jenna stole my baby name, she didn't just steal a word. She stole trust. She stole memory. She stole legacy. So when I saw an opportunity, a real one, to take something back, I did. And what I took wasn't just a name. It was her daughter's inheritance. And when I tell you I didn't plan it, not at first, I mean that truly. But betrayal rewires you. It sharpens your instincts. It teaches you to watch where other people leave things unguarded. And Jenna left something wide open. A century-long family tradition she wasn't worthy of, tied to wealth she never appreciated. And I became the one who claimed it instead. But none of that started until months later. Until the day I found out I was finally pregnant. And for the first time in a very long time, I had the power to choose. The day the test turned positive felt unreal. It glowed up at me from the bathroom counter like a sunrise, small, quiet, but powerful enough to burn away every shadow in my body. 2 lines that said everything I had hoped for was finally within reach. I pressed my hand against my stomach and whispered to someone who wasn't even anyone yet. You're here. You're real. And everything will be different now. I didn't tell anyone, not at first, not even Jenna. The silence was intentional, the privacy was oxygen. After spending years explaining my pain to everyone, I wanted this moment to be only mine. I let it sit under my ribs like a secret made of light. Invisible, but brilliant. The second trimester came, and with it, the ultrasound. She was a girl, my daughter. The child I dreamed of every night after watching someone else take the name I had loved for her. But now that she was real, growing, kicking, already rewriting my heart, I began to wonder if clinging to Celeste was really honoring her, or holding on to my pain. 2 weeks later, like fate had a sense of humor, I ran into Jenna's mother-in-law, Diane, at the grocery store. She looked tired and elegant in that way only women who have been disappointed too many times can. Her cart was filled with heirloom tomatoes and fresh herbs, and she looked relieved to see someone who didn't want anything from her. When she mentioned the name Jenna had refused, something in her voice cracked. Margaret Rose. 100 years of tradition. A lineage stitched into fabric and family stories, passed from mother to daughter like a blessing. And Jenna had rejected it. It wasn't until I got home and started thinking about it that I realized what had happened. She didn't want the name because it wasn't modern enough, wasn't trendy enough, didn't sound good in Instagram captions. A beautiful name with a beautiful history, discarded like a sweater out of fashion. That night, I stood in the nursery that was only a blueprint and whispered the name to myself. Margaret Rose. It felt like breathing in fresh air. It felt like belonging. It felt like roots. I looked up at the empty space above the crib and imagined it embroidered in soft thread or painted in gold stars. Margaret Rose. Maggie. A name grounded and full of weight. Unlike Celeste, which floated somewhere above me, now like something that once belonged to me, but never truly could. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jenna took a name tied to the heavens, and I claimed the one that was tied to the earth. At 6 months pregnant, I finally told her. Not in a text, not in a phone call. I didn't need her approval, but I knew what the name would mean, and what it would take from her. She couldn't stop talking about her daughter's celestial nursery, celestial photo shoots, celestial updates, the whole world lifting her up like a star. But this name, Margaret Rose, was the one connection to a legacy she could never have, because she didn't want it. But I did. And when my daughter was born, the world responded in a way I never saw coming. Diane sent flowers, real roses and white lilies, and included a note about how much it meant to her that her family name had survived. She sent family photos, heirloom jewelry, hand-sewn dresses from a century ago. This was never about money at the beginning. It was about preserving something, honoring it, when someone else had thrown it away. But it wasn't long before it did become about money. Because 1 year later, on Maggie's first birthday, Diane sent a legal document, a trust fund notice, with a 6-figure inheritance for the next Margaret Rose. Not Jenna's daughter, not Celeste, my daughter. The family's inheritance bound not by blood, but by name, by choice, by fate. And that was the moment I understood something that took me a very long time to accept. Sometimes the universe doesn't just balance things. Sometimes it gives you exactly what someone else thought they deserved most. When Maggie turned 1, the trust fund letter came on thick cream-colored paper embossed with a golden rose. I sat with my husband in the dim morning light, holding the document like it might burst into flames. It was real. $150,000, set aside to be released when Maggie turned 18, to fund whatever she needed. College, business, a home, generational wealth, sealed with tradition, but carried by a name I chose, not by lineage, but by protection, by intention. Diane had written a short note, full of emotion I could feel through the ink, not a thank you, not even a welcome, but something else entirely. You preserved us. From that moment forward, Maggie became more than my daughter. She became a legacy bearer, carrying a torch someone else had thrown away. And I silently realized how deeply Jenna had miscalculated the cost of what she stole from me. I didn't post about it. I didn't brag or gloat like she had done when she'd taken Celeste. I didn't need to. The truth was already loud enough, and it lived in the cracks between us. Still, the fallout came fast and unforgiving. Jenna found out. Of course she did. Someone in the family had spilled, or maybe Diane hadn't been able to resist announcing her pride. Either way, Jenna discovered that the inheritance meant for her daughter had gone to mine, and she shattered. First came the texts, the outrage, the accusations, the emotional blackmail. But what struck me was that none of it had anything to do with the name. None of it had anything to do with motherhood or love or tradition. It was all money. She never valued the name, never respected its weight, but losing it to me, watching Maggie be celebrated where her daughter was an afterthought, was the first time she had ever truly felt powerless. Yet even then, I didn't feel victorious. I felt something else, something heavier. Because while Maggie was celebrated, cocooned in tradition and stories, I found myself wrestling with a strange duality. I had won. But at what cost? The nights got longer, the air got heavier, and some part of me wondered whether I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. Even Dean began to ask questions. Was it really about the name? Was it revenge? Was it fate? Or was it me becoming the kind of person who holds too tightly to pain? I told myself Maggie would grow up loved, protected. With a history and support, Jenna could never give her own child. But I was also raising her in the shadow of a choice that, someday, she might not understand. One night, I stood by her crib and whispered the truth out loud for the first time. This was never about stealing. It was about taking back what was taken from me. Not just the name, but the dignity, the consideration, the sacredness of dreaming. And maybe sometimes, justice doesn't look like kindness. Maybe sometimes it looks like balance. By the time Maggie was 2, Diane had practically adopted us into her world. We were invited to every family dinner, every holiday, every celebration passed down through the generations. Not because we were related by blood, but because I made a choice that honored what someone else abandoned. And one night, as I sat there at the long dining table, surrounded by people I barely knew, people who now called my daughter the future, I finally understood how powerful names really are. They aren't just words, they are stories, promises, inheritance. They are legacies that either survive or die, depending on who carries them. And Celeste, Jenna's Celeste, would grow up with a name that shimmered but held no roots, no history, no echo of a grandmother's voice, no lineage in her blood or her future. Not the way she'd imagined it when she stole it from my grief. She took something heavenly, but hollow, and I took something bound to earth and built a future out of it. The thing about revenge is that it rarely ends where you think it will. It doesn't feel like fireworks. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Years passed. Maggie grew, radiant, curious, wild like her father, observant like me. The kind of child who listens before she speaks. The kind of child who senses tension even when no one says a word. There were moments when I wondered if the universe would punish me for what I'd done. If karma would wear Maggie's face one day and ask me where I buried mercy. But then she would wrap her small hands around mine, call me Mama in her soft voice, and I would remember everything I had survived to get here. The nights of negative tests, the silent bathroom floors, the baby showers for everyone but me. The feeling of holding someone else's dream in your hands, only to watch them take yours like it was nothing more than a pretty idea. No one talks about how grief changes the shape of your future, how sometimes the only way to heal is to take back the space someone stepped into without permission. And yes, I took the name. I took the tradition. I took what Jenna discarded like a burden. But I also gave Maggie a destiny she would grow into with pride, not resentment. Somewhere along the way, Diane stopped calling Maggie the honorary granddaughter and started calling her my girl. They knitted matching blankets. They baked holiday cookies using a recipe older than the town itself. When Diane grew sick, Maggie sang to her. She wasn't a replacement, she was a continuation, and Jenna saw all of it. We still live in the same town. We still see each other at the grocery store. We still stand in the same circles sometimes, where people speak in low voices, careful not to take sides, but knowing exactly what happened. But the one who lost the most wasn't me. It wasn't even Jenna. It was Celeste, a girl named after the stars, but raised beneath the shadow of bitterness. Surrounded by a legacy her mother destroyed before she could ever touch it. The last time I saw Jenna, she didn't look angry. Just tired. Older. She crossed paths with us outside the post office. Maggie waved at her, because children still see kindness where adults see conflict, and Jenna just stared. She looked at my daughter, wearing a little rose-embroidered cardigan from Diane, and then back at me. There was something in her eyes I had waited years to see. Regret. Not because I had taken something from her, but because she had thrown it away first. It took me a long time to stop feeling guilty, to understand that what I did wasn't about retaliation, but reclamation. Taking back the right to dream, to honor, to protect what mattered, even when others didn't. Names have power. Some are stolen, some are inherited, some are chosen with blood, and some are defended with everything you have. My daughter, Margaret Rose, will grow up knowing that her name is more than just a sound. It is a story of loss and reclamation. A quiet war fought not for wealth, but for worth, for memory, for legacy. And if someday she comes to me and asks if I regret it, if I regret the choice I made that chained two families together in silence and shifted the course of two girls' lives, I will tell her the truth. I will say there are moments in life when silence becomes betrayal, when standing still means surrendering the things that matter most, and that sometimes doing the right thing looks like doing the hard thing, because the inheritance she carries was never just money. It is the weight of belonging, the right to be loved deeply, to be chosen, deliberately, in a world where so many are forgotten. And I will look at her, and I will hope that she never has to fight the way I did. But if she does, she will not fight alone. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to Tale Hub. Your support keeps these stories alive. See you in the next one.